kind of like thing you can have for preparing for certification. First of all, let's see. So you have access to a student portal. You should have gotten an email on this, and it's actually hosted on the WebH Solutions website. And this is the one that runs for this time frame. Now, this is something relatively new they kicked out. It's pretty simple to use. You can find your representative. There's his email and phone number. You don't have my contact information. I don't know why. Accessing your book, like if you want instructions on that, that's all listed here. You should get a video, by the way, that tells you how to get access to your practice exams. So like, for example, if we click on this, I believe, did that download a file? I'm not sure what that did. Some of these links don't seem to work just yet. So let me just check this really quick. No, that was my backup from earlier. There's still a cram session. There's the supplemental labs. There's the certification guide. Oh, never mind. That's what is happening. I'm blocking pop-ups. Cool. All right, let's try that again. All right, practice exams, by the way, this should be a link to a Word document. This Word document basically just gives you some simple instructions about how to like submit your license key and whatnot. The exam cram session and all that, which is I think going to be, I want to see either it's like Friday or it's either next week. It could be both. There's a couple of developer exam cram sessions set up, but this portal like has all the information, including access to like if you want to know all the trainings that WebH does for booze and all that. It's all like listed here. There's also a video, by the way, around like test prep practices. So this is basically an orientation. And oddly enough, this orientation was supposed to be generic, but it was tailored for developing on AWS. And there was an afternoon session and a morning session. Probably recommend you just watch the afternoon session because it was better than the morning session because I'd done it 5 times by the time I got to the afternoon session. So I knew how to deliver it better because that's what happens when you practice. You get better at it. So you can also read that. And then any recording should show up under day 1, day 2, and day 3. I am also going to share a YouTube link that has all of them there just listed for you. So you're going to have 2 different ways to get the recordings from the class. So I just wanted you to see that this was here. You can also get access to Basecamp. If you want to message, there's nothing in Basecamp. Sorry, it's not in there. So like if I wanted to send you all a message, you are all part of this Basecamp, right? So I could spam all of you. Doesn't that sound like fun? Anyway, if you need to use that, you don't want to use Teams or Slack or whatever you use, and I don't know why you would want to do that, but just in case. If we have an update, by the way, like typically I'll post it there because it'll automatically send you all an email notification. As you can imagine, I don't have access to Teams, or I actually do have access to Slack through Booz, but I don't have access to Teams for whatever reason. Okay, that's what I wanted you to know. Curious, has anybody gotten their promo code or license code for Tutorials Dojo yet? You got it. Okay, so at least one person got it. Good, Dong. Thank you. Cool. Well, then perfect. Then let me talk about this, since I know that some of you, or at least most of you, should have your certification guide, because I think this is going to be very useful. Let's close that one out. Okay, let's just save it. Okay. So this is the certification study guide that comes with taking the class with us. Now, don't worry if you don't have it. You should have it in the morning, but you don't need it right now because you shouldn't be looking at it anyway, honestly. So you're already taking the developing class. This can be done at any time. So just because you did it now or doing it now doesn't mean you couldn't have like started studying this material. But in here are the links to the white papers, including security best practices, all these other pieces, white papers on deploying .NET applications. But I just want to point out something. There's a .NET track, a Java track, and there's a Python track. So be aware that you get to choose the language that you want to study, just like you get to choose the language that you're taking, inside your, class, right? So just be aware that you have a choice here, okay? Sorry, I'm just kind of going back and forth for a moment. Now, regardless of which track you're doing, whether it's .NET, Java, or Python, they all work the same. You've got a lot of white papers that you're going to have to read. Do you have to memorize them? No. This is the associate's level. You need to skim them, get the broad strokes, but I don't necessarily need you to rattle off details. If you want to do that because you've got the brain for it, go for it. I highly recommend it because especially if you're going to go for a pro certification, you just save yourself a lot of time. There's also digital trainings here, like getting started with .NET. Development tool overview, API gateway for serverless, introduction to ECS and EKS, which is the container service orchestrators basically for containers, container migration methodologies, practicing CI/CD, et cetera, et cetera. This is all relatively useful. That was too much. All right. I can see that I'm just shot myself in the foot by even touching that. I regret doing that. So fragile. All right. Other things that are going to happen is that you've got all this study material in these first few sets. And then what will happen is you can then get access to supplemental labs. Now, as part of being a Booz employee and taking a class with us, if you go to amazon.quicklabs.com and you sign up, what will happen is if you sign up with your Booz Allen email address here, you will get free access to all of the labs that Amazon offers on this webpage, but you have to use your last name _ first name at bah.com to get access. What will happen is you're going to get credits on your account. These credits, by the way, are going to go up and down because everybody at Booz is using them. But you now have the ability to run amazing labs. Like, for example, if you've never touched DynamoDB before, that's a $3 lab. That's a $24 lab. That's a $10 lab. That's a $10 lab. You get all these for free now. I'm only saying that not because I want you to be like super impressed, but because that way you don't have to pay for it. This is just a value add for you, right? So this is how you get access to like all this hands-on practice. If you're like, Michael, I have never touched, let's pick one, CloudFront. More labs here on CloudFront. I don't think they have a whole lot of Elasticache. They have some. Assuming I can spell Elasticache. Anyway, yeah, so introduction to Elasticache. They have a few labs, but not a whole lot. Let's say that you were like, Michael, I want to mess with Lambda. Guess what? Tons of Lambda. Lambda, 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 Lambda. So if you sign up using your Booz email, which by the way, the instructions for this are on your portal. So you can find it at the student portal for getting access to supplemental labs. Just know that you once you get access, right? You just have to sign up. That's all. Just use your bah.com email. Don't use that number at bah.com. I don't think that works. I think you have to use your last name _ first name. You have to use your bah.com email for signing up for supplemental labs. Just FYI. Okay, so let's say you've done this study. Now you're messing with the supplemental labs. How do you know whether or not you're ready to take your exam? Well, first of all, you're not, because you haven't done the practice labs yet. So we give you access to a website called Tutorials Dojo. This link should take you directly to Tutorials Dojo. You will have to log in. If you don't have a login, well, there's instructions there on how to get access to your practice labs. Typically, by the way, you have to create your own login. Again, I think you have to use your BH email. The instructions are right there, so they do vary. And you might say to yourself, okay, Michael, so once I get logged in, I'll follow the instructions, I get access to the practice exams. What do I do with the practice exams? Here it is. So let's say you're going to do developing on AWS, the Certified Developer Associate. And notice, by the way, you're going to these exams are going to update for 3 years, and you're going to have access to them for 3 years just from taking this one class. Here's the thing you should be interested in. I don't want you to touch any of the types of tests that he has here except for review mode. That's it. The review mode practice exams are the only ones I want you to touch. Do not touch the flashcards. Do not touch the final test. You can. It's not going to get dinged. But the review mode exams are the ones that you should be interested in. Here's why. in order to know whether or not you're ready for the exam, you're going to take any two of these sets of exams one at a time until you can get a 90 percentile on that one exam. I know you're like, Michael, why 90%? Well, 90% because first of all, John's a genius, but these questions are not copies of the exam, and nor would we want them to be, just to say this. So you're going to lose some points because the questions aren't going to be the same. 2, you're going to be nervous, so you're going to lose some points because you're going to be nervous. So if you get a 90, then we're probably going to guess that somewhere you're going to get between 80 and a 90. You might get higher if you just really want to shoot for perfection. I have friends. I have a group of people that I like do certifications for free just to give back to the community. Some of them are perfectionists. They're like, no. And like one of them took the test and got like a 96. And she was like, I only got a 96. I was like, okay, good. So if you're that person, that's fine. Take all 5 of these exams if you're that person. But for most of us, you only need to take 2 of these tests and get 90%, and you'll pass the certification. That's assuming, by the way, you've done all the study and you've done some hands-on practice, because I'm not a fan of paper certification. So make sure you have some expertise and some experience to go along with your certification. Now, let's say that I decide I'm going to do set 4 and 5 again and again until I get 90%, but I'm going to do 4 until I get 90%. Then I'm going to do set 5 until I get 90%. If you've never touched, by the way, AWS into production, you should probably do 3, but 2 for everybody else. So let's say I'm going to pick on certified developer set 4 because I really just want to do this one and I'm going to retake the exam and I want to pass it. Here's the kind of questions they're going to ask you. Developers planning on using Beanstalk to run the X-Ray daemon on the EC2 instances in her application environment. She's going to use X-Ray to construct a service map to help identify issues with her application to provide insight on which application component to optimize. The environment is using a default Elastic Beanstalk instance profile. Which of the IAM managed policies does Beanstalk use for the X-Ray daemon to upload data to the X-Ray service? I know we haven't even covered, by the way, Elastic Beanstalk. And just to be clear, in case you missed it on day 1, the class only gives you about 60 or 80% of the information you need to pass. This is the other 20 to 40% right here. It's also, by the way, in the white papers and stuff that you haven't read yet. So like which of these managed policies are going to allow the upright data? So I'm just saying, I'm not even going to look, I'm just going to guess, right? I'm just going to say, okay, I think it's the first one, but I could be wrong, right? Maybe it's the last one. So in this case, I was wrong. It's actually the last one. This is why this is cool. So John's going to tell you that, first of all, you're wrong. He's going to tell you exactly why this is the right answer. In this case, it's the X-Ray daemon right access, right? He's going to tell you why the other answers are wrong, which is very important. Because if you didn't know that X-Ray daemon right access was the right policy, why did you think that full access was? Correct your thinking. You now know that it's not the right policy. He's going to show you, by the way, the docs that are source of information for all of this stuff. And if he has a cheat sheet, he'll give it to you. And if you need some help instrumenting your application with X-Ray, he's going to show you there. If he has a video, he'll put that there as well. In other words, this is going to show you the rights and the wrongs of answering these questions. Let's move on. So let's say a developer has a node function running in Lambda. The code initializes a database connection to RDS every time the Lambda function is executed, and it closes the connection before the function ends. What feature will allow the developer to reuse the existing database connection instead of initializing it each time the function is run? Now, again, this is covered in the training and the white papers that you've looked at. Notice that the class didn't teach you anything about this, right? It didn't like tell you. Execution context, by the way, is the answer. So these are the kind of things that you're going to pick up by taking these practice exams. Do you see now why I was like, it's not really important that you have practice exams on day 1 and day 2? Because 1, we haven't covered all the material. And then even if we have, it's not going to teach you everything you need to know. Right? So I hope it's clear that between the white papers and the training that are in the program guide, the supplemental labs, if you need that, because I want to remind you that the developing on AWS is a conceptual test. I would love for you to get hands-on just so you can get production experience, like, project experience. Not required really to pass the exam, but I'm a fan. Some of you are hands-on. Most developers are. So you're going to do the labs to drive it deeper. But the practice exams are the final step. So you're going to read the white papers and do the study, do the supplemental labs, especially if that's a benefit to you. And then you're going to do the practice exams, do 2 exams, one at a time until you get 90%, do the second one until you get 90%, do a third if you've never run a project in production in AWS. Once you have 90% on 2 of these practice exams, you're ready to take the test. This typically requires 40 hours of study. So 8 weeks at 5 hours a week. If you want to go faster, put more hours in. You want to go slower, put less hours in. Any questions about the voucher, the program study guide, the supplemental labs, or the practice exams? And Jacob, I'll answer your question in just a second.
Michael, looking at the Excel spreadsheet of the study guide, there's 3 tabs. Is there a difference between the 3? Or I see like a J and a P at the end of the other 2 tabs, a junior or professional. They look the same.
Let's see. Well, they shouldn't look the same because one has Java in it, the other one has .NET in it, and the other one has Python in it. If you're seeing the same thing, then we failed horribly, right? Yeah, at least this first section, like the like 8 lines 8 through 12, they should be different.
Okay,
right? Because you're gonna have Java at the beginning, and you should have .NET at the beginning. So, and don't get me wrong, some of it's the same. Like Lambda Foundation should be the same. Development tools overview should be the same. But hopefully, you're not seeing the same thing. I don't always know that what I download is what you guys have in your portal, but it should be distinctive. The rest of it should look identical.
The Python tab still has Java, it looks like. And I just downloaded it from my link, so it looks the same as yours.
Okay, yeah, it does look like it has one of the functions with Java in there. I don't think there was a good replacement in Python for that, so I think I left it in there.
Okay.
I also would point out that the Learn Python on AWS Workshop is one of the most comprehensive. Like if you don't know Python, it will teach you how to learn Python. So anyway, you could skip the Java one. I don't think we had a good replacement about how to build functions, but I'll check again and see if we can update it because I bet you there's some now.
Michael, you said we should receive this study guide at some point, like tomorrow morning?
No, it's in your portal that you should have access to.
Oh, okay, gotcha, sorry.
Yeah, all of this stuff should be in your portal, accessing your practice exams, accessing the supplemental exams, the developing on AWS certification study guide, all of that should be in your portal. Your recordings. This portal, by the way, should contain everything that you need, including the recordings that I'm going to give you. The only thing it won't have is any like links that I post that are unique to the moment around like EC2 instances or that kind of thing. Okay, let's see. Jacob, how do I log into Tutorials Dojo? So there is an accessing your practice exams link in your student portal. Someone was saying earlier that it was unique on a per student basis. I haven't heard that, but this is all brand new to me. This is the first time we've launched this. When I click on it, I don't think it does anything. Oh God, it just did something. That's funny. It just blocked off a lot of stuff is what it did. That's funny. Well, they might be using pre-signed URLs. That's cracking me up actually. Let's see, let's try that again. Accessing practice exams. Huh, I don't see anything here. But I think you, for some of you that worked, so. Okay. Now, here's what we typically do for the rest of the time is that we run through some practice exams and you all are going to answer. But I'm going to take 1 or 2 of the questions and show you how to think about the exam. But that's what we're going to do is we're going to run through practice exams. We'll also do the same thing tomorrow. So let's give it a shot. Okay. This one you might know the answer to. Yeah, Jake, I'll give that a moment. So you don't need access to the practice exams today. So I'm going to find out what's going on there. Yeah, we're going to see what's going on. So it's not working for me either. So here's the deal. You're launching a Lambda function integrated with API Gateway, which we just talked about. It is required to specify how the incoming request data is mapped to the integration backend request and how the resulting response integration is mapped all the way back to the method response. If you want to control all those stages of response and request, which of those is the most appropriate method to meet this requirement? Now, first of all, I want you to note something. It said a Lambda function, right? So first of all, you know they're talking about a Lambda function. So before even I look at the answers, this is a Lambda problem, not a web application problem, not an HTTP post, none of that. And then we want to control how mappings happen between what is asked for and what is like sent. Now, remember, they said that the easiest way to run a Lambda function integration with an API gateway is to use the proxy, right? But that was the simplest way to run it. It didn't give you as much control. So I would guess that the custom integration is probably what they're looking for in order to control how like client request is received, how the request is then sent to the back end, and then control how the back end sends the request back to the proxy and the proxy responds to the client. I'm gonna take a guess here and think, I think it's probably gonna be the Lambda custom integration, but I could be completely wrong. But note that I only had to choose between two answers because I knew this was a Lambda problem because it says it's integrating with a Lambda function. It does not say anything about integrating with like a web backend. It's integrating with Lambda, not another external API, because then that would be a web problem. HTTP in that case, right? So this is going to go through and explain why all of this is the way it is. And it's going to explain what a custom integration will get you. So I saw that some of you answered already. That's perfect. Good job. All right. I'm going to analyze one more and then I'm going to let you run at it. Okay. So you got a software engineer building a service application consisting of Lambda, API Gateway, and DynamoDB. We need to implement a custom authorization scheme that uses a bearer token authentication strategy, such as OAuth or SAML, to determine the caller's identity. Which of these features of the API Gateway is the most suitable one that we should use to build this feature? So which of you remember the two names that we called that thing that allows you to use a third-party integration to authenticate? Well, it's not cross-origin resource sharing. Cross-origin resource sharing is a web protocol that enables another domain to download images and files from another domain. So it's not CORS. That's something that's primarily with S3 that we see that, right? Or any web server. Now we know it's well, I'm going to say this, is that it's definitely an authorizer, because authorizer sounds like the right word. It's definitely not a resource policy. So we've already eliminated two of the answers. But two of the names for that authorizer was a Lambda authorizer or a custom authorizer. Same name for the same thing. So I'm pretty certain it's going to be a Lambda authorizer. I could be wrong, because maybe the cross account is something I've never heard of before. But in this case, it's the Lambda authorizer. So there's two types of authorizers. There's a token-based one. There's a request parameter one. So we now know that we can use JWT or an OAuth token with the token-based authorizer. And we learned that there's a request parameter-based tokenizer, blah, 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 that receives the caller's identity from the submitted URL. Now, I got to tell you, I didn't even know this existed. Cross-account Lambda authorizer is incorrect because this just enables you to use a Lambda function from a different account as your authorizer function, but it's not a valid authorizer type. So, okay, I'm not even sure what that means. But the rest of this, you can see, it'll tell you why the rest of this is wrong. Okay. All right, so we're going to do the next ones, but I'm not going to analyze it. So everyone read. When you're ready, A, B, C, or D. Good. So just to qualify this, first of all, we know we're talking about DynamoDB and we know we're talking about submitting updates. So that's a right to DynamoDB. And you're basically saying, I want to ensure that update operations will only succeed if certain conditions are met. Man, they're really kind of teeing it up, right? So conditional writes make sense here because not only are we writing, but we want to put conditions on whether we will or will not write. That sounds like a good fit, right? The rest of these, like batch operations, that's for batch. Projection expressions is for projected attributes, right? As far as like which ones you want to retrieve. I don't even know what update expressions are, frankly. Oh, it just specifies how update item will modify an attribute. Okay. Gotcha. Didn't know what that was, honestly. So good. All right. Perfect. Okay. Next one. Okay. So I got to throw a little bit of a caveat on this one. Okay. You can post your answers. I'm not going to give it away. This one is a straight memorization. And I'm just going to tell you. The reason is that when you read the paper on like security in AWS, it's going to tell you this little fact. This little fact is that Oracle and MS SQL inside of RDS can support this thing called transparent data encryption, called TDE. It is literally a straight up memorization thing. Because if you haven't worked with Oracle or MS SQL, how would you know that? I haven't touched Oracle, by the way, in long time. At least outside of RDS, like I haven't touched it on premise. And MS SQL was only a few years ago. But TDE is something that's common to both of them that you can enable for both of those enterprise databases. That one, you just have to know. Just to say this, by the way, authentication is definitely not going to cover encryption. So you could have eliminated B and C right off the bat. RDS encryption, not really a thing. So, and honestly, it is TDE because it's supported for Oracle and MS SQL. Okay. So that one you may not like get just because that's a straight up memorization one. You just had to know that one. You can't really figure that one out. I would have guessed probably without, if I hadn't known it, I probably would have guessed RDS encryption, just so you're aware. By the way, I'm just making that up. Maybe I'm wrong. By the way, notice it says that it supports it for the following versions. Pretty much every version I've seen actually supports TDE. So. Okay. Next one. Startups launched their new mobile gaming and is getting a lot of new users every day. They want to add a feature that will enable cross-device syncing of user profile data across all the mobile devices. Which of the services should they use to enable cross-device syncing? Now, some of you probably know the answer. Some of you are just like, I have no idea. So what is your best guess? Right? I mean, honestly, if I didn't know, I'd be like, which one has the word sync in it? Right? To Antonio's point. Guess what? In this particular case, that works. They actually name something for what it does. That doesn't always happen with AWS, by the way. It rarely happens, frankly. So sync is the answer. That one, you just have to know what Cognito's capabilities are. Cognito, by the way, is built for mobile and web management, but particularly mobile management. So, the user pools, the identity pools, the syncs, the pushes, all that, right? So this would explain exactly what Cognito sync does. Tell you why the other answers are wrong. We're almost done. Okay, this one is for ECS, which we haven't really talked about yet. And I haven't forgotten about you. I think it was Gerald or Billy, one of you two, was asking about containers. That'll be the first thing I do in the morning, just so you know. I'm going to talk about containers for a second. All right, so you're configuring some task definitions for your ECS cluster to make sure that the task a la containers are scheduled on virtual machines with enough resources to run them. It should also follow the constraints that you have specified both implicitly and explicitly. I can tell you this question, I'm like, which of the following options should you implement to satisfy the requirement of making sure you're running on a system with enough resources? But I gotta tell you, with the least amount of configuration, I don't even know what that means. It should also follow the constraints that you specify implicitly and explicitly. So when you define a container, you can say how many resources you want the container to have, both what to start with and what it maxes out at. I'm looking at this going, it could be spread, it could be bin pack. I don't know about random. It's definitely not random. Pretty sure it's not random. Anyway, let's see. Does someone answer this one? I know this one. 448. A, going for A. Spread task placement with custom placement constraints. That's probably what I would guess. I actually think that it's D, but honestly, in this one, I don't know what they're asking for. Oh my God, it's the one that I was like, sure was not it. That is hilarious, right? So let's take a look at this and see what's happening. Let's see. You're configuring to make sure tasks are scheduled with enough resources to run. It should also follow the constraints you specified with least amount of configuration. Okay, let's take a look. By default, tasks are randomly placed. I knew that already. Spread is used to achieve high availability, make sure they're not on the same system. Knew that already. Bin pack placed them on the least available amount of CPUs. So this minimizes the number of instances in use. So it just places them randomly. Doesn't require further parameters. Random places tasks yet honors the other constraints you specify. Is that what they said? They said to place it randomly. Didn't say to place it randomly. That's confusing. The questions are like that sometimes. Okay, so it's interesting. So bin pack basically says, I want you to run on an instance with the minimum amount of like memory and resources necessary. Because I might have 10 instances, but I want all of my systems to stack on a system that's already being used. You might think that's weird, but just no, by default, all of the container orchestrators are going to spread your stuff out like randomly. It's just going to spread it out. Random says, I'm just going to run on any machine that actually has available capacity, and I'm just going to pick it at random. Spread says you have to spread it out. Do not run it on a machine, even if it has more capacity. You have to make sure these tasks do not run on the same box. That's what spread does. So I find that interesting because it doesn't say that it wants it to be random. So I don't know that I would have gotten that right. I would have actually guessed A or D. Yeah, it goes like that. Okay, probably the last two. Developers building an AA-based traffic monitoring system using Lambda and AWS. Due to the complexity, the developer must do modifications such as the way Lambda runs the function's setup code and how the invocation events are read from the Lambda runtime. So in this particular piece, which feature of Lambda should you take advantage of in order to customize the setup code and customize how things are read from the runtime API? I'm gonna tell you right off the bat, I don't know what DLQ is. So that one I don't know. Lambda at edge is when you want to run Lambda on CloudFront, like you want to run it on the edge servers. I'm pretty sure that's not the case. So let's say it's the last two, either a custom runtime or layers. Just want to say that we're modifying the way that the functions setup code and how events are read from the runtime API. I gotta tell you, layers are really used to host dependencies and other like additional files for your deployment code. Oh, is that what that stands for, Andrew? That makes sense, actually. They do have deleter queues for Lambda. That's definitely not it. I'm going to say that it's a custom runtime in this particular case. I'm going to agree with some of the answers that some of you have put here. It is a custom runtime because it is actually modifying the setup code and the runtime API. And I didn't know what a DLQ was, but honestly, I couldn't think of a single thing that could possibly be relevant for that. Lambda at edge, I knew what that was. Layers, we know what those are. Custom runtime, I know what that is. So I kind of knew that's what the answer was going to be. Okay, Let's sneak in 2 more. How often would you say keywords are in the questions and the answers? A lot, actually, Anthony. Yeah. Startup launched a high quality photo sharing portal using Lightsail and S3. We haven't talked about Lightsail, by the way. Lightsail is like a lighter version of EC2. They notice that there are external websites which are linking and using their photos without permission. This has caused an increase on the data transfer rate. What did we say was the thing you had to manage if another domain wants to access your pictures and videos? Yes, course. Good. Hopefully everybody remembers that. It's course time. Exactly. So in this particular case, we don't need to do anything crazy. We just like enable cores or check cores or whatever. Oh God. Okay. Let's see. Configure this to remove public read access and use pre-signed URLs with expiration dates. Okay. Okay. So this is where the question gets weird because they didn't say that they were using S3 to host their images, but it was implied. Yeah, that's a good point, Amber. Didn't read the answer all the way through, did we? So it's implied, by the way, that they're using S3 because if they mention the service in the sentence, to go back to Anthony's statement about keywords, if they mention the service in the sentence, they want you to make some assumptions. In this case, S3's use case, primary use case, is to host web and image files, right? So in that particular case, they're implying that S3 is in use. And to Amber's point, it's like, we don't want to enable cross-origin resource sharing. It's probably pretty much already enabled, right? Especially from all origins, because then we're just basically opening it up and saying, hey, they can just steal our pictures. To enforce this, especially if S3 is in play, what they're saying is let's lock it down, remove public read access, and use pre-signed URLs with expiration dates, right? And you could use pre-signed cookies as well. So one thing that's keen about that is that make sure that you're not pre-assuming what the answer is because you're like, oh yeah, we just talked about cores, let's get it down, right? And I kind of just let my excitement go ahead on purpose because that does actually happen in the exam, right? Is that you miss keywords like effective or most suitable or cheapest, or like you really like have to just read every single thing. So one thing I do, just so you know, is that I will literally put my eyeballs on every single word to force myself to read every single word, because sometimes I will read so quickly I won't actually like take in all the detail. So just as a point of strategy, make sure you read every single word in the sentence, and that includes the answers as well. Good. Okay. All right, let's sneak in one more and then we'll stop. You've got a request to increase your account's concurrent execution limit to 2000, and it's recently been approved by AWS. There are 10 Lambda functions running in your account, and you already specified a concurrency execution limit on one function at 400 and another function at 200. Which of the following statements are true? Now, in your certification study guide contains a bunch of information about how to run Lambda, including what a concurrency execution limit is, how much is reserved, how much is available for all functions, and a bunch of stuff like that, right? Anyone want to take a guess? All right, so let's say C, because you guys select two, just two, right? That's another thing, by the way, that will often burn you. Make sure you read what it's asking for. So it wants two. All right, so I see C is definitely an answer. I see A is another vote. Let's see what happens, because I kind of know what the answer is. So first of all, this is true. the remaining 1400 concurrent executions are going to be shared among the other 8 functions. So if you don't specify a limit, the 1400, by the way, can be shared across all the functions. Now, if you want to set an explicit limit for a remaining third function, you can only set it up to 1300 because Amazon will not allow you to take all of the executions and assign them to one function when you have other functions. They always reserve 100 for all the remaining functions. So you actually can't eat all of the concurrency execution numbers for a bunch of functions. You always have to leave 100 free, right? So for example, concurrent executions is the number of Lambda executions you can have run concurrently at any given time. You can change your reserve concurrency, right? Like as far as like you want to change it for, but the unreserved account concurrency is always going to be 100. It can never go below 100. They will always make sure that you have this little buffer for your remaining Lambda functions. That way you don't, in a sense, to borrow a phrase, shoot yourself in the foot by taking away all the executions for the remaining Lambda functions. So that would be something you would just know from doing the training on Lambda. Because notice that we didn't talk about the reserve limits, and it's nowhere in the speaker notes. I don't even think it's in the student guide. You just have to know this by doing the training and, of course, the practice exams. We're going to do more of these. So I hope that was useful. I know, by the way, at first, you're probably looking at this going, Michael, I didn't know the answers to any of that. That's like super uncomfortable. Good. I'm just going to say this. You're just getting started with this, right? So you shouldn't have known the answers necessarily right off the bat. And so as you work through this class and you work through the study guide, you're going to pick this stuff up and it's going to become second nature. But right now you should be really uncomfortable with the thought of taking this exam. And the practice exam should seem pretty daunting. But that's why we practice. That's why we go after this. That's why we give you the structure so you can train again and again and again. And this will build your exam taking muscle. And then you can just take it. But it's going to take a little bit of work, but you can do it. I have taken people who literally knew nothing about computing through this exam. And you guys are in the industry, so you're going to be fine. You just need to put in a little bit of work. And just know that even though we're going to be done with class, you can always email me or talk to me if you need like a boost or you're getting stuck on something. Just call me. We'll make time to talk, okay? So I just want to make sure that your confidence level should be low right now, and they're going to get higher the more you train, okay? Questions of any type before we stop for the day? Yeah, absolutely. Right.
Michael, real quick, accessing, so I'm looking at the student portal as well. It says accessing your ebook as an example. I click on the download, it says, oh, you should have received an email about it, which I did, but are those like this study guides, or is it just permission to access the class, or what?
So that's course materials. So that should be your AWS, like digital, like student guide. That's on their course materials. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because accessing your labs and the ebook are all part of the official AWS curriculum. Everything else is supplementary that we provide to you that's outside of AWS.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Cool. All right, everyone. So we're going to get back together at 8:30 in the morning. I'm going to run through containers. So I'm just going to talk briefly about containers before we move on to other things. We're going to spend the rest of the day talking about a variety of different topics, but all related basically to, okay, my brain just stopped working. All related to like SQS, SNS, adding in different features and enhancements to our fictional project. Okay. All right. We'll see you all tomorrow. Have a good night, everyone.